one of the most crucial steps in the process is going to be the FDD and the review that follows. Heath, can you, for someone who is interested in doing this, but they've never heard of those letters before, give us kind of a high level view of what is an FDD?
Yeah. So it can be a little daunting to look at an FDD. They can be, 200-300 page documents. And that's because it is everything about that franchise you would ever need to know, from the ownership, the backgrounds of ownership, everyone tied to ownership of the company. Do they have any past litigation, bankruptcies? It's getting all the skeletons out of the closet, so to speak, in the beginning. And then it dives deep into the financials, the total investment, every single item that is encapsulated within the investment, the fee structure, territories, financials. But it's nice because, yes, it's 200 plus pages, but it's sectioned off into items, and you can break it down by item. And there's probably 6 to 8 items in an FDD that are really worth highlighting. And that's kind of what the FDD prep can really help with. Something that I know Jared does with your clients. You just say, hey, these are the key things to be keeping an eye out for, to ask questions about. But it goes back to that word transparency. Like, there's not a lot of businesses that roll out every single thing about themselves as you're looking at, exploring ownership. And that's required by the FTC, that every franchisor discloses every single candidate that comes through their doorway on their FDD. They give them a peek behind the curtain, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say it's interesting. Franchising has been around for a few decades now, and but there's still not a ton of government oversight with it, which is good in a lot of ways. But there's also some unfortunate things that happen with that. But the FDD is one of those things where they do have oversight. And so this is actually going to be one of why it's so important for you is because that franchise disclosure document is going to be one of your most beneficial aspects in the whole process as it relates to becoming an owner with them. Because there are things that a franchisor can and cannot say to you, whether it's based on whether it's in or not in the FDD. Now, there are some, like, whenever I encourage people to look at it, I'll tell them, like, hey, I can look at it. I am not going to give you for me personally, I'm not going to give you any kind of business advice based on this FDD. All I can do is ask you questions. Okay. Now, what I can do, what I always encourage all my clients is, however, I can put you into contact with a franchise lawyer who they can legally discuss this with you. They can unpack it with you. They have a much better, more comprehensive understanding of what an FDD is and looks like than I do, than you do. And so they would be the right person to talk to, and they're not connected to that franchisor at all either. And so we can do some of these, very important steps along the way to make sure that you're getting all your questions answered, all your I's dotted, T's crossed, and make sure it's the right thing. Because I'll tell you to look at some. Heath, what would you say are some of the more important? They're all important. I get that. But if someone has never looked at an FDD, and you were to say, hey, you really should look at least right away these items within the FDD, what would that be? What would you suggest?
Yeah, well, the first 3 are important. 1, 2, and 3 are important because it's kind of the background on the company. And that's where you're getting into, okay, who are all the characters, who are all the players behind the ownership? And it goes deep. It'll be board members to CEOs, and you can see all their backgrounds.
Right. And that's such a great tool too, because that allows you to then go to Google.
Yeah.
They Google your friend, Google the names, see what you learn about them.
Yep. And then there's litigation, which is important. You can see,
3,
but litigation, it's important to have context too. And I'm glad Jared brought up a franchise attorney, and franchise is the key word there. You do not want to use your personal attorney to review an FDD. It's good to have someone with knowledge of the franchise industry to look at that. But in litigation, you want to keep an eye out for, okay, how long ago was this? Was it franchisees coming after the franchisor? Was it the franchisor, going after some bad apple franchisees? That's really important context to have around it. And then you can look at bankruptcies, the financial health of the company and the people behind the decision making for that company and their financial past. So that's 1, 2, 3. And then I think 5 is really important. That's where it breaks down the franchise fees. And if you're a veteran, it'll talk about the discounts. So you can get some really good pieces of information.
What's it cost? That's item 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Based on territories, all that good stuff. Item 7 is, like I said, where it goes line by line and tells you exactly what that investment range encapsulates. And in that is working capital too. So a good franchise will have good numbers on, once you've paid for the franchise, here's what you have left over to really make it go. Yeah. That's something to keep an eye out for in the item 7. And then I think 12 is important. Get an idea of how they map out their territories. Is it population based? Is it, a radius of distance around the store? What does that look like? Yeah. And then I think 19
are those territories exclusive?
Yeah. All the rules around territories. And
or
then
could they put, the same kind of franchise right on the other side of the parking lot as you,
Yeah. So. Yeah. The non-competes, all that's encapsulated in there. And then 19 is the one you'll hear referenced the most because that talks about earnings. And I will say not every item 19 is as good as another. There are some brands that lay it out very transparently. They'll show you every franchisee, what their revenue was. There's other franchises that get a little more creative with how they structure it. They'll say, oh, these are our average earnings. And then you see the fine print at the bottom and it's top 10%. So you want to really understand what that item 19 is showing you.
And that's so good because like I said about the government, like they actually don't have to disclose information in the item 19. They could put nothing in there if they wanted to, and so, or they can disclose the information how they want to disclose it.
Yep.
So it's important to really look at the fine print, especially in that item 19 to see what, and it's going to like the good ones are going to be honest and break it down into, not just quartiles, but they're going to break it down into 10% ranges too, all the way down to their very bottom performers, all the way to their top. You're going to get the average, you're going to get the median, you're going to get all those numbers in there to kind of get a gauge. And the thing is, like every franchise that's worth their salt, they're going to have not such great things to put into an FDD at times. Like, for example, you mentioned the item 3 with litigation. Mm-hmm. Any franchise that's been around a while, they're probably going to have some kind of, court case or, lawsuit or litigation issue in their item 3. That doesn't mean that it's a bad brand. That means, hey, ask questions about that.
Yeah.
Don't just because it's got something in there, they've been sued or they have sued a franchisee.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they're just ask about it. What was the situation there?
Yep.
Who were the owners at that time? What was happening? Yep. Same thing with item 19. Ask questions. Why are your bottom 25% doing so poor? Mm-hmm. What is that about? What's that about?
Yeah.
And so ask those kinds of questions. That's really what it's about. Is setting you up. Anything else you would say on the FDD?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it's important too. Not every brand even has an item 19. There's a lot of newer brands will wait because they want more of a sample size to pull from to really show like palpable data. So don't take a no item 19 as a knock against the franchise. Like Jared said, it's just probably a good question to ask if it's not a brand that's in their first couple of years. And then the last item is item 20. And this can tell the story of a franchise because it shows you the growth, the if the number of franchisees has gone down, if there was a big mass exodus of franchisees.
Right.
Again, good questions to ask. What happened here?
Why
it doesn't. Yeah, it grabs your attention. It doesn't necessarily always mean it's a red flag though. Yeah. But it'll tell you last year, this is how many we brought on. This is how many we lost. These were the reasons behind the ones we lost. Again, it's that transparency. It's really helpful. And then the last thing, if you're a numbers nerd, usually if you scroll down to the bottom of FDDs, you can see their balance sheet of the entire company. You can really analyze the overall financial health. Are they operating at a profit, a loss? Where's their money coming from? Where's their expenses going? It's again, full transparency on the balance sheet of that franchise. So I think those are the main things to look out for. But like you said, when there's something that grabs your attention, don't jump to any conclusions.
Right.
Just ask that franchisor about it. They should have a good explanation for anything in their FDD.
Yep. That's why we call it due diligence. And in fact, actually, Heath, I'm going to correct you. That item 20 is not the technical last item. There is an item 21.
Yeah.
But it's just a all item 20. The last item is just something you sign. It's just the receipt,
like a disclosure.
saying
Yeah.
you have received the FDD. Now, and that's important because sometimes I'll work with a client that gets that and they're like, hey, they want me to sign this. Like, what am I doing? It's not in any way. Again, it's not a decision-making point. It's just legally they have to, in order for you to receive it, you have to sign it saying I've received it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's really all it is. And so it's not, you're not agreeing to becoming anything as a part of this brand in any way. It's just saying you have received it. That's all it is. But just so you know, that's the other thing that you'll end up signing at some point in order to get the FDD. Now, with the FDD, what's important to know about it too is once they give it to you, this is another kind of government oversight thing, which is helpful. It's to your advantage. You cannot sign a franchise agreement within 14 days of receiving that FDD. So there is actually a intentional period of 2 weeks in there that you have been given and are allowed to review, to spend time reading it, because it's going to take some time. And I encourage you, this is a big, potentially lifelong investment for you. Spend your time reading it. Ask for some help. Let's connect with a franchise lawyer who can spend some time going over that with you. But you have 14 days to do that very thing. And so that's kind of the benefit there of that.